Yeah, Gavin, can
Yeah.
you hear me now?
Yeah. Good.
But I'm not having any luck at all connecting.
Okay, all right. Just
I take it you can hear me. Can you see me?
No, but we can hear you. Okay, are we live now,
We're
Karina?
live, good, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Karina. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers, for joining us tonight for our Policy and Resources Committee. We have 3 items on the agenda this evening. I should say that this is a remote meeting this evening, so we are streaming live onto the Council's YouTube channel. We are not in control of the comment section, so if you are using the comment section tonight, please do be considerate of others. We also have expert partners with us from a variety of places, including Cushman & Wakefield, and Tim is here and on hand to answer any questions that members may have this evening. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Karina?
Yes, Chairman, I have apologies from Councillor Baggott with Councillor Rimmer substituting.
Thank you. If Councillor Baggott does try to join, then I will allow him to come in and speak as group leader. I know he was struggling with timings tonight, so if he does show up, we will obviously allow him in. Do I have any member with the declaration of interest, agenda item 2? Councillor Smith.
Essex County Council, because obviously this deals with highways.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other member wishing to declare an interest? Councillor Headley.
Someone should be monitoring the raised hand option. I'm also a county councillor, so I'm declaring the same interest as Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I can see every member of the committee on my screen, so just feel free to wave at me and I will bring you in as we go. Any other member with a declaration of interest this evening? Thank you, members. The next agenda item is agenda item 3, which is the Town Centre Regeneration Strategy, which went to the Town Centre Revival Committee a couple of weeks ago. Members have received the strategy document and that is in front of them alongside the recommendations. I'm going to hand over to Matt Carroll, who is going to introduce the agenda item, and then we'll open this up to questions from members. Over to you, Matt. You're on mute, Matt.
Apologies. Thanks very much. Just a quick introduction from me today. The report's obviously been circulated along with the Regen strategy itself and the engagement summary. So hopefully you've all had a chance to have a read through that. I just really briefly want to clarify exactly what it is. So it's a framework and it's guidance for our partners, landowners, developers, investors. It sets out our aspirations and our expectations, but it's not a blueprint. So the timetable for adoption of the Regen strategy as planning policy couldn't be achieved in advance of the emerging local plan. As such, this would not be until 2022. So we've moved away from a more formal planning document, SPD, at the moment in order to ensure that we're able to provide clarity to the market quickly and provide determination of a number of key planning applications that are in train currently. So to reiterate where we are on the route to where we've got to, the process has been underway and undertaken over a year or so with monthly updates and presentations on the emerging plan to Town Centre Revival Committee. We've had 2 separate public consultation stages, one held within COVID conditions and one not. The latest consultations included public webinars, Q&A sessions online, obviously, and a series of weekly full member briefings by the technical team to cover some of the fundamental aspects of the approach. So there's been broad support from the community, as hopefully you'll see within the engagement summary. We have noted the key themes that have arose in the consultation and have tried to address these with explanations contained within the engagement report. There is also now further explanations of some of the key consultation themes on the website itself. So that's now up and running. That's all live for people. An important point to note is that what you're seeing at the moment, what you've seen today, is the core document, and this sets out our main guiding principles. But we will be providing a range of more detailed guidance notes on individual topics and areas to provide further clarity. And some of these will again pick up on points raised within the consultation stage. So we're working on those at the moment and they'll be ready within the next few months. So the regen strategy itself has been approved by Town Centre Revival on the 9th of September and is now presented to P&R for further ratification. And it's just worth saying this is an exciting moment for the council and the community as we move into the delivery phase. And as I said previously, this strategy is our guidance, our aspirations, our vision, but there will be a whole range of further consultation as particular projects and schemes move through the planning stage. So actually, this is the beginning of a fairly long process, and there'll be many more opportunities for the community to have their say about the detail of what actually happens within the town centre. So thanks very much, and over to questions.
Thank you, Matt, for your presentation there. Do I have any member who wishes to open up the debate this evening? Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Chair. We've got grave concerns being reflected by the residents at large who feel that they haven't been consulted. It's been bubbling up on social media. Those that did complete the consultation themselves felt it was a lot of leading the witness in the way that the questions were actually asked. What is your response to that?
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. What I would say to that is that there is a misconception that has been peddled, and we've seen this at the Town Centre Revival Committee, that the consultation on this master plan started in the middle of COVID. And of course, that's not the case. The council has been consulting with the public and with a variety of stakeholders, including schools, including retailers, for the last 16, 17 months now, which has been informing the decisions that the council has been taken. And we made that. The council's appointed master planners have been presenting to the Town Centre Revival Committee along the way the findings of those multiple consultations. What we would also point to, and what you can see in the report this evening, is that the consultation response that was achieved for this master plan is in line with similar consultation responses for similar sized regeneration schemes in similar sized councils elsewhere in the country in non-COVID times. So what I would say is, whilst of course we would all, I'm sure, as councillors prefer to see a much larger response to our consultations on everything, not just on this, but on every consultation that the council does. There is nothing abnormal about what the council has received from the public in terms of consultation responses. It was also the case that if paper copies of the consultation responses were needed by members of the public, we were able to provide those as well. But in terms of consultation, I would also say, when you look at the council's website and the guiding principles that we have outlined, but also particularly what Matt can demonstrate, and I will bring Matt in a moment to comment on this. We've identified 8, I think it is, key themes in the consultation responses that the public have come back to us on, whether that be fire safety, whether that be car parking, whether that be the height of the buildings. And on the council's website, there are answers to the questions that the public have raised with us. That's a very open and transparent way of doing it. We've also insisted, unlike, it should be said, the county council when it came to the incinerator proposal for Pitsea, we have insisted that pre-apps be held in public, and the public have had an opportunity with the emerging plans to sit in on those webinars and to engage with the pre-application work that those developers have done. And of course, there will be, as there is starting to be now on one application at least, statutory consultation. So there will be a further round of consultation for the public. I also think it's worth noting that we are probably in the next 12 months, say, going to be in receipt of perhaps 5 planning applications when it comes to this town centre, all of which will have both pre-app and statutory consultation for the public. That is 5 out of probably 50 that will come forward over the next 10 years in regards to the town centre and the regeneration of that town centre. So we are very, very much at the beginning of this process. It will be a 10 to 15 year process. We're very much at the beginning, and I'm confident that there has been extensive consultation, not just in terms of the individual applications, but the principles that we are voting on tonight and that we are looking at as part of this regeneration strategy. I will bring Matt in, who was indicating there previously, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Rimmer. Matt?
Yeah, thanks very much. Just wanted to, on some of the figures, just to sort of put that out there. There were, throughout the whole of the process, there were 2,864 public interactions in relation to the master plan. We've just been doing a little bit of comparison with Commonplace, who ran the website for us in relation to other similar consultation events. That it's very difficult, obviously, comparing apples with pears, but there's just a couple here. So on the second half of the consultation that we did, there were 738 contributions. For Enfield, and remember our borough population is 185,000. With Enfield's local plan, there were 1633 contributions, and they've got a population of 360,000. And then also with Sutton's town centre master plan, they had 800 contributions with 205,000 population. So what you can see by that is we think we are quite comparable with other similar consultations, and it should be noted that this obviously took place in different circumstances. So hopefully that helps. But I think Christine wanted to mention something around the response as well.
Christine?
We consulted on the Orwell application recently, and that we sent letters to, we sent leaflets to 3,500 residents and people in the town centre. And we so far have had 18 objections to that application and 5 supporters. The objections are around building height, mental health, fire safety, infrastructure, heritage impacts, too many flats, and commercial increasing crime. The supporters are about enhancing the town centre, designing out crime, modern spin-offs, creating a better environment, new homes, businesses and jobs, and the increased change to the borough. So that's the difference. So we've had 33, so we are constantly consulting, and a similar consultation of 3,500 will go out to Infrared for the Eastgate development as well. So and we're doing those as bespoke letters, leaflets, rather than actually letters which tend to get put in the bin.
18 objections. There's at least one Tory councillor who hasn't sent in their objection then, by the sounds of it. Councillor Rimmer.
Well, it sounds like it was residents of that area rather than necessarily Tory councillors. In respect of the consultation exercise, I think partly it has to be about educating people to bring them along with you, and to do it in a way that is consensual. And I get the feeling, now I'll be honest, I never liked this idea of the flats, and in terms of the density that were being brought into the town centre and the arena. But just reading the temperature of the community and the level of feedback that has been received, the level of anger that's out there at the moment, it feels like the consultation has missed one of its key objectives, which is actually to bring the community along with it in terms of support for the master plan. And I put it to you that it would be better to reopen the process, to actually do another exercise of trying to educate people about what we're trying to achieve as an outcome, because obviously everybody's on the same page as saying that something needs to be done in respect of Basildon Town Centre, and some sort of master plan has to be created. But how do we do that in a way that is sympathetic to the environment? How do we do that in a way that's sympathetic to the infrastructure that exists or looks to enhance the infrastructure? How do we do that in a way that's sympathetic to the heritage of the town, that new town architecture of the post-war era? How do we do that that's sympathetic to the lifestyles that people are living within the town itself? And there's some interesting reads from that consultation response that I don't think have been reflected in the master plan as well. You know, even in the children's drawings, you can see there's more trees and more play areas that are actually put into this, while actually what we're looking at here as an outcome seems to be just more flats on the whole with one big arena. But put that aside, I think that the times that we live in are unprecedented, and we can benchmark ourselves against other councils and say that's good enough, or we can actually say we are trying to do something here that's absolutely going to radically change our town and our borough, and it's important that we feel that we've got it right for our community. And that means stepping out of benchmarking against other authorities in unprecedented times and seeing what we would like to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. I will bring in Councillor Headley, Sullivan, then McGovern. But before I do that, I just want to respond to a couple of those things. I take it, you know, I understand that the reason we are bringing this to PNR is because of the size of the policy decision, and consequently, some members of the committee will not have been apprised of all of the information that went through the Town Centre Revival Committee. But the key thing to understand is that we're not passing a master plan document here tonight. We're passing the regeneration strategy. The master plan will go to full council alongside the local plan as a planning document when the time comes and we're able to do that, and the government allow us to have our examination in public and all the rest of it when it comes to the local plan. So there is a difference there, and I don't think any member should be confused about that, and I don't think any member should think that that there isn't going to be another opportunity. I've said already this is a 10-year project, 15-year project, so there will be multiple opportunities as we go forward. I take the point around there needs to, now we've got the guiding principles in place, we need to then underpin that with a series of policies, and in the service committees we will be doing that throughout the autumn and into the winter around what policies we want to see come forward. But I would just point out, you know, Councillor Rimmer mentions the issues of the school children's photos, and I was very pleased to present the winners of that competition with their prizes last Friday. The reality is on that, those kids have told us they want play areas. This administration is putting an £8 million youth zone into the heart of Basildon Town Centre, something that the opposition has voted against. This administration is putting more trees, more greenery, more environmental sustainability into the town centre than there currently is at the moment, and that is underpinned as a guiding principle in this regeneration strategy. So if you are in favour of that, I would be surprised if you were not then in favour of the regeneration strategy as is, because the concrete jungle that exists at the moment in Basildon Town Centre does need to change. There does need to be far more greenery, far more trees, far more ecology and sustainability in our town centre, which is part of what we are seeking to do. Councillor Headley.
Thank you, Leader. Can I make it clear from the outset that we will not be supporting the recommendations as tabled tonight? And in terms of the consultation, my main objection to it is that it was constructed in such a way that the questions were biased to give the answers and the evidence that you have now presented. So if I can briefly outline what my group's position is, on taking administration, we would abandon this particular strategy. We would go out to consultation in line with the best practice principles of the Consultation Institute. We would give 3 clear options with indicative costs to the residents. And the 3 vanity projects, you already mentioned one of them, the arena, we wouldn't put forward. The youth zone, whilst that might be a very laudable ambition, we do not believe it's sustainable in Basildon, and Essex County Council have a greater engagement with youth than has ever. The statistics prove it. Their engagement is not based on property. And given the potential changes in local government, we would not be rebuilding the civic centre. So our proposals will help us to build the homes our borough needs, bridge the present generational divide, and recreate an ownership society in which more people will have the dignity and security of a home of their own. I believe that that consultation that we would undertake is necessary so that the residents have a complete picture of the opportunities they have to help shape their borough. And can I put you on notice that we would not use any of the consultants currently engaged with Basildon Borough Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Headley. I'm tempted to let you speak for another hour, to be perfectly honest with you, because that was quite extraordinary. I should point out as well that part of the town centre revival.
Happy to do that if you want, Leader.
Floor is yours.
I think, as I said, your consultation was so badly flawed that the residents have not had the opportunity to evaluate any other options. The institute that has the best practice principles, you didn't actually adhere to any of them. The consultants that you used steered you to the evidence that you wanted. And our real concern is that the high density, high rise platted developments have failed in the past. The majority of the high rise building installed and built in the London area and in most of the major cities and towns across the country are now subject to demolition. The smallest units that you're anticipating building are 64 square meters. We would not agree to that design standard. I would rather go back to the Parker Morris standard, and a minimum standard would be around 80 square meters. You've not addressed the parking issue, and I do believe that despite the move away from petrol and diesel driven vehicles, people still have the ambition to own private transport. You've not addressed the issue of parking in any shape or form. I think that the greening of the town centre is completely spurious. I don't trust any of the current consultants that are working with you. I think they're happy to take your money, or I should say, they're happy to take taxpayers' money. And it is, I believe, when we did an information inquiry, you've already spent over £300,000 on consultants. One of the consultants is now embedded in the council as a manager, but he is the director of an outside company. We would not tolerate that sort of engagement with consultants. The consultants are beholden to you, and I understand that, but I would want to see an independent consultant that is not being steered by yourselves and your administration. So I think we have a very rational narrative to put to the residents to give them a clear opportunity to help shape the future of Basildon. And whilst we are myopically engaged in trying to deal with Basildon Town Centre, and let's make no mistake, we understand that the town centre as it is cannot exist. It has to change, but it has to change for the better, and it has to have a sustainable design, a place where residents of Basildon would wish to live. We appreciate that there will be new people coming to Basildon. We welcome that opportunity, but I do not believe we need to build high density, high rise flats for overspill from London boroughs. And I think you've missed an opportunity. I appreciate you have your own vision. You're very articulate in explaining that, but I don't think the general public and the residents in the new town really fully appreciate the danger that you are presenting them with in the long-term future. And when you talk about engagement, I represent a ward in Billericay, other councillors represent wards in Wickford, and I'm not surprised that they aren't engaged in your consultation because they're concerned more about losing the Greenbelt. And there's no doubt about it that the local plan does earmark great swathes of the Greenbelt for potential development. And my understanding from the planning manager is that the additional numbers on this town centre regeneration are additional to the local plan, which is still with the inspector. You made a great play over the years about forgotten estates. And since you've been in administration, I haven't heard you articulate anything that you're going to do for your forgotten estates. They are your forgotten estates. We regenerated a number of estates. We built more homes in Basildon during our administration. It's all right for people to shake their heads, but the truth is out there. Dry Street is a wonderful development. Gloucester Park, Markham's Chase. They are the sort of homes that people want to live in. And I don't believe that what you're planning for the town centre is the sort of aspirational homes that we want for the residents of Basildon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Headley. Many points to come back on there before I bring other members in. And let's start with some statements of fact. The Conservative members of the Town Centre Revival Committee voted in favour every single step of the way in terms of the consultation. They voted on the appointment of the master planners and they voted for the consultation. So it is slightly odd that at the 11th hour the tune is now changed. I hear the arguments about high-rise developments. It is startling to me to hear Conservative councillors say that, given that they were okay for high-rise developments to take place in Wickford throughout their tenure when they were in administration. They were okay for high-rise developments to take place in Nethermain, in Cherry Down East and in the Icon whilst they were in, but all of a sudden, whilst they're in opposition, they've found an aversion to high-rise apartments. He talks about the number of square meterage that we are bringing forward. And of course, Councillor Headley is an experienced politician. He knows that is not the case. There is nothing in the master plan or in the regeneration strategy about what the council is doing. Individual landowners and developers may bring forward their proposals, and it will be for our planning officers to work with them to make sure that whatever they bring forward is acceptable to this council. And we have not stipulated anywhere in this regeneration strategy that we want 30, 40-storey buildings. So to suggest that would be completely wrong. When you talk about consultants, let me just say very clearly, because that is an attack on an officer who is on this call. And let me say very clearly that officer is 100% dedicated to Basildon. And I regard that officer not as a consultant, but as an officer of Basildon Council who has done brilliant work over the course of the last 9 months to get this council further forward in 9 months than we had been for 19 years as a consequence of the previous administration. So I say very clearly tonight that Matt has my full support and the administration's full support for the work that he has been doing, and anything other than that is a particularly low blow for a councillor to sit here tonight and to do that. When he talks about how the public doesn't understand, I think that is to simply do down the public. I know there is a desire to live in an echo chamber that is a Facebook page, but as we've heard already tonight from the head of planning, we have been out to 3,500 residents and 18 came back against, 5 in favour. The overwhelming majority of residents who we have been speaking to are in favour of what we are doing. I have been stopped in the street more than I've ever been stopped in the street for any other issue to tell me that they are massively in favour of what we're doing. So if you want to hang your hat on the idea that the public are too stupid to understand what we're doing, which is the inference of your suggestion tonight, I think that is a scandalous thing to say about the public, and I don't agree with it at all. You talk about the fact that the numbers in the local plan that were submitted, but you know yourself that you submitted a plan that did not meet the OAN. So you can't sit here and say that we're just plucking numbers out of thin air. We are meeting the OAN number that your government has set this council. And the alternative is clear. If you don't put them into places where they can take density, are you planning to build on Gloucester Park? Because you've done it once, perhaps you'll do it again. Are you planning to build on the Dunton Garden Village? Where are these other 2,000 homes going to go that your government is going to tell you when you have your examination in public that you need to find? So I think, all the way through this, I hear, Basildon needs to change for the better from the very people who for 17 years had control of this council and presided over a complete disaster. And what I've never heard in 17 months of committee meetings, and again tonight at the 11th hour, is what the alternative is. Perhaps I should correct that. I've heard one alternative, which is to deprive Basildon of a youth zone, to deprive every 8 to 19-year-old in our borough with somewhere to go and something to do 7 days a week in our borough after a decade of slashing youth services. That's the answer tonight. You shake your head as if, somehow everyone in the borough has missed it. Youth services have been slashed to the bone. And here we are intervening positively after consultation with young people in the borough to put a youth zone in place. And you're telling us tonight, Conservative policy is to abandon the youth zone. You tell us that you're not in favour of the arena, which will bring in business, will bring in trade, will bring leisure, arts and culture into Basildon Town Centre, and you're against it. And you're against the rebuilding of a civic centre. And I'm not quite sure where you've got in your head that there's going to be the rebuilding of a civic centre, but with the COVID pandemic, it has proven that actually there could be a downsizing of the existing operation, which could free up space for businesses elsewhere in the borough as well, so in the town centre as well. And I just, with the greatest of respect, I hear this, it just makes me so angry, because I was a young person growing up in Basildon when you guys were in administration and you left us nothing. You left us a complete mess of a town centre. And then here I am tonight, when we sit here about to pass a regeneration strategy to finally put something right, and I'm supposed to listen to the people who built the sporting village on the wrong side of the park. I mean, couldn't even get that right. So it makes me angry. And I have to say, may you never, ever get re-elected into this borough ever again if you are going to deprive the people of this borough with, basic services, basic retail, basic hospitality, and give people a chance to live and get on the property ladder. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. First of all, I just would like to state that I'm speaking now as someone who lived for the first 32 years of his life in Basildon. I'm old enough to remember a lot of it being built. I remember it in its heyday when you had police directing traffic on round so busy. And then I've seen it in its long gradual decline, which in my estimation probably began when Lakeside was built. So I've seen the town centre in all its incarnations. Now, the Conservatives already had a master plan, the 2012 master plan. As the cinema that's on Eastwalk is now coming forward. We built the development of the Gloucester Park, across Gloucester Park and the old swimming pool, which was bringing residencies to the town centre. And of course, we also moved, or started the process of moving the college into the town centre and moved the market. Of course, the leader fought tooth and nail against.
Sorry,
but they must have been pretty good.
Are people struggling to hear, Councillor Sullivan?
Yes.
It's slightly breaking up, I think. I don't know if you're able to do something.
I don't know. I have it's come up unstable internet connection now and again, so I don't know.
We'll try and lean in a bit or something. I don't know.
Right. Well, anyway, so can you hear me now? Yeah. Right. So
you need to lean to the left a bit more.
Always a good idea.
Or you could switch off your phone or something that's taking broadband.
Maybe your video off, Stuart, and maybe we might get a better connection.
Honestly, yeah.
Well, maybe we've cursed that completely. Stuart, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
That's better, yeah. Go on.
Right, okay, right. Sorry, so anyway, so the point I was making, we had the 2012 master plan. I believe that already good things came of it. And in fact, some of the stuff was is in this strategy itself. Now, with regard to the current town centre, I believe at the moment we are still living with the effects of the last time we've had Labour administrations designing the town centre. Of course, you had the Towngate Theatre, which was, the auditorium was too small. That was as a result of the then Labour administration built in it, and that therefore made the Towngate Theatre less commercially viable. You had the council offices, which were also supposed to be like a community centre, community hub. Therefore, the shapes of all of the rooms weren't suitable as a place of business. It was unfit for purpose. And of course, we have the Westgate development, which is known as a parasitical development. Doesn't add anything to the town centre, it's inward looking. And now it gives no sense of arrival into the town centre from that end of the town. So now we have a situation where 30 years later, we're proposing in this strategy to demolish these things. And our concern is that in 30 years' time, our successors are going to be doing the same with this town centre plan. Now, first of all, the predominance of flats. My colleagues have already mentioned this. Now, personally, I've got nothing against flats per se. My first residence when I moved out from my parents was to a flat in Leeds Chapel North. It was a small 3-storey block with 12 flats in, and it was brick built. So there's nothing wrong with flats on their own. The issue we have flats, and I think it's been well documented the experience of those that were built in the 1960s and 70s. High-rise flats cause isolation. There's nowhere for children to play. They're a focus of crime and antisocial behaviour. And of course, our administration had to demolish the Royal Court flats in Langdon for just those purposes. And not only that, you will have a lot of these flats now are system built. And in page 72 of the strategy, it says you will use forward-thinking construction techniques, which is a red flag because the last time that we did this in the 60s and 70s, we ended up with all the disasters that I was just mentioning that were then pulled down in the 80s or had to have cladding on them. So therefore, we are concerned with regard to the preponderance of flats and also the number, what we believe will be the proposal for high-rise tower blocks. Now, in the strategy, in the schematics, it's notable that impressions show some tower blocks, but not those that are particularly high. We believe that they will end up being a lot higher than is being suggested, at least by the schematics in this document. With regard to parking, Councillor Headley has already mentioned that. And again, in page 72, it says the aspiration is to reduce the dominance of vehicular traffic. Well, I think there's now suggestions that from 2030, it could well come in that they will ban, the government is going to ban the sales of any new petrol or diesel car engines. So you're talking about from 2030, it could well be that there will be a rapid decline in the amount of internal combustion engine cars, which as a result of that will mean obviously a much better environmental impact. So I think if we are going to try and improve the environment by reducing the amount of parking to reduce the amount of vehicular traffic, we're in fact going to be trying to disinvent something that's already on its way out anyway, long term. So I think that will be detrimental to the town centre itself, but also to the surrounding residential areas, because I think that if you reduce the parking, as a result of which you will get far more parking in the areas that surround the town centre. This is mainly a housing-led development, and also the danger with housing-led development is the most profitable bit of it, the housing, tends to get built first, and then the other stuff takes longer or sometimes doesn't get built. The trouble we had with the 2012 master plan and also the Wickford Town Centre master plan, not that we didn't get them to complete fulfilment, was due to the economic downturns. And this is especially true, with the vagaries of the economic cycle. So again, our concern is with something that's such a preponderance of housing-led development like this, it could end up that the housing gets built and then economically it might not be right for developers to then build the rest of the stuff that we need in the town centre. So our conclusion with this strategy in general is too reliant on housing. There's too much high-rise building in this. There is not enough parking. And as Councillor Headley has already said, it's founded on a flawed consultation. So I will therefore, Chairman, like to propose an amendment to the recommendations. Now, before I say this, can you just confirm you can hear me? Because I've gone on a bit there. I don't know how much of it you've heard, but I want you to hear this bit.
Heard it all.
Good, thank you. Right, so our proposal then, and I'll look for a second from Councillor Headley, is that we will delete the recommendations in the agenda, and we would like to replace them with the recommendation. So if I read it through slowly, and Karina or whoever can tell me if they've got it all. So our recommendation is, and I'm quoting, taking into account the importance and long-lasting effect of these decisions, comma, the council resolves to reconsult with residents to ensure the widest and largest possible response before proceeding. Stop. The consultation to follow the best practice principles of the Consultation Institute Centre of Excellence. So if
is that it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. If Karina could read that back, please.
Yeah, I haven't got it word for word, but obviously I can get it off the recording.
Okay.
So there will be a true record of it.
I got it as being the council resolves to reconsult with residents and follow the best practice guidance that Councillor Headley referred to earlier on. Okay.
And delete your recommendations.
Yeah, I got that bit. Okay. In terms of the amendment, do you have a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Headley seconding that. Okay. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak to the amendment first off? Any member of the committee? No, I've got Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman. I find it rather interesting that the Conservative group want to go out to consultation. Last night, of my committee, to go and consult with the young people across the borough on what they would require in a youth zone, they voted against consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Rimmer. On the amendment, Councillor Rimmer.
No, yes, absolutely. I won't talk to that. No, I think this is a very sensible amendment that has been proposed by my colleague, Councillor Sullivan, and seconded by Councillor Headley. Both are very experienced about actually consulting and listening to the people of Basildon and implementing plans and policies that are actually sympathetic to their needs. And I think in this time, we have to acknowledge that the consultation hasn't achieved the outcome, which is actually to bring the people of Basildon along with it. Even though it attempted to lead the witness for much of it, as Councillor Headley had actually stated, it didn't manage that fully with that first question in respect to more homes for Basildon. It was 55% in favour and 38% against, despite the way the questions led the witness. And we know from social media, we know from our own email boxes, we know from the host boxes, but actually there's a lot of anger out there about the town centre master plan and the regeneration strategy. And I think it has to either be a job of re-explaining and then consulting again, or actually coming up with different options to consult upon. But we have to consult again, because there is still a question of democratic legitimacy, but there's no fault of this administration, because obviously the elections were actually postponed until next year. But people are actually asking, do they have a mandate to do this? And honestly, I do not think you do.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I will bring Councillor Smith in to speak on the amendment. I just reiterate a couple of very key things here. The council has been consulting for 17 months. The Conservative group on the Town Centre Revival Committee supported every single step of the way the consultation and only changed their minds in May. So, and I've also outlined there will be 10 to 15 years of consultation, including pre-apps and then statutory consultation on up to, in the region of circa probably 50 applications that come in over that 10 to 15 year period. So far there has been one in. Okay, so I just put that context out there for people, because I keep hearing this, that, you know, the consultation hasn't achieved the outcome. The consultation clearly hasn't achieved the outcome the Conservative group want. Okay, but the consultation response in front of members, the evidence in front of members, is that the consultation response that the public responded to was in line with similar authorities in terms of the numbers of responses, and it was in favour. And we have shown where we have gone to 3,500 doors on that first application that has come in as well. So I do think we just need to add that context into this as we debate this amendment. But Councillor Smith has asked to speak to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm literally going to speak on the amendment and not other points that have come up. I'll save that for due course. What this amendment does, removes the 4 recommendation and asks to go back to square one. What I will say to people, you've got to be careful. The developers are waiting at the gates. If the council throws this town centre master plan, all of it, every single piece, in the bin and starts again, the developers will be thinking it's Christmas come early. With town centres, there is permitted development, and also the dreadful rules Prescott brought in about you can build in town centres with no parking spaces, none. Before this meeting started, well, we had a few minutes, I asked Christine about the Trafford House application. They want to put another 3 floors on. Across the road, the Bold car park, when the new owners bought the land, I met with them and I asked them the question, do you intend to run this as a car park indefinitely? They went, in due course, we will be looking to put a 7-floor high building on top of the Bold car park. If we don't grab this ball by the arm, the developers will think it is Christmas. And as for the allegedly democratic concerns, what happened to the meeting to agree phase 1 of Dry Street? Thousands upon thousands of Basildon residents wanted to come to that first meeting of Dry Street. And the chairman of the planning committee from Wickford got her pen out and denied thousands of people their say, thousands of people. And now you've got a nice development with no pavements, other bits and pieces, which will cause problems for residents in due course. So it is important we proceed and protect the residents and get the best outcome for Basildon. Otherwise, developers will be kissing the hands of the people who vote for this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I think that's a very important point that you raised there around the fact that the principles that have guided us in this regeneration strategy is to take back some control and to exercise some control over the developments as they come forward. Whether this council chooses to adopt a regeneration strategy tonight or not, those developers are coming forward with their planning applications and they intend to bring those to the committee. And so it's very important, and Tomasz, I will bring you in at the moment, it is very important that we do that. And as for the democratic principles, Councillor Rimmer, you were at the Strategic Planning Committee last week. You will have seen the debate about the forthcoming planning white paper, the possibility of zoning, the possibility of losing affordable housing when that white paper becomes law. It is a complete unmitigated disaster of a policy that will put Basildon backwards. But we are trying to take back control. Councillor Rimmer wants to keep asking the question till he gets the answer that he wants. It's all starting to remind me of something. Tomasz, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a point on the control aspect, just to try and give members a little bit of assurance here. Number one, the guiding principles are gearing towards that very point that both yourself and Councillor Smith was mentioning, to try and avoid that free-for-all scenario. That's the whole point behind them, along with the charter that we're developing, so that we can get developers to line up and sign up to that and agree to those principles and adhere to our ambitions and vision for the town.
Thank you, Tomasz. I've got Councillor Baggott, and then I'm going to put the amendment to the vote and go back to the substantive. Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I could say what I was going to say either to the amendment or substantive, because it's fundamentally the same thing.
So it's a substantive then.
Now,
we'll bring you back in on the substantive.
I'll do it now, you see.
No, it's fine. I'll bring you back in on the substantive. What we'll do, Councillor Baggott, decorum, we'll bring you in on the substantive so that you have your say. I'm going to put the amendment to the vote, and then we will come back to the substantive, and I will bring you in. Can I ask members to unmute their microphones, please? We are all, does anyone need reminding of the amendment? Or is everyone satisfied that they know? Okay, in which case, I will kick things off. I will vote against the amendment. Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor McGowan.
Against.
Councillor Headley.
For.
Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Sullivan. To unmute yourself, Councillor Sullivan.
I think we've lost Councillor Sullivan.
Perhaps Councillor Sullivan could assure us before the next meeting that he'll sort out the technical difficulties he's presently experiencing.
Okay. Councillor Rimmer, how do you vote?
For.
Okay. If Democratic Services are okay, I will come back to
Councillor Sullivan is on the line here to tell you that he votes for. He's lost connection.
He's just come back on there.
Just got it. I'm back. Sorry, vote for the amendment. Did you get that, Chairman?
Yeah, thank you. After all that, the amendment is lost by 4 votes to 3. Thank you, members. In which case, I'm going to go back to the substantive. I've got Councillor McGowan first.
Thank you very much. Well, interesting evening, isn't it? An evening of revelations. Before the meeting even started, Councillor Rimmer confessed that he was a supporter of Liverpool Football Club, which is quite a shocking admission. I'm now torn as to whether to refer to him as Scout Craig or Scandi Craig. So, you know, whichever you prefer, Craig, let me know. But then the meeting got underway, and an even more startling assertion from Councillor Rimmer, basically rubbishing the whole consultation process. Well, I'd just like to say, I'd like to thank the officers and everyone involved for carrying out a consultation in very difficult circumstances, a very extensive consultation, more extensive than it needed to be. And, you know, Councillor Headley will probably know, some of us were in a meeting with Essex Highways where they did a consultation about the Cherry Down redevelopment, where I think it was 75 responses came forward, and they regarded that as a bit of a result. They also ignored the fact that almost all of them were negative. But, you know, so please don't lecture us on consultations. Have a word with your Conservative pals at Essex about what a proper consultation is. You know, overwhelmingly, the response to this consultation was positive. However, you know, and again, Councillor Rimmer referred to social media activity. There's a bit of noise, Councillor Rimmer. There's always a bit of noise about things, but actually it's a small number of people making a lot of noise. And also there is a campaign of misinformation and, more importantly, disinformation about this, and there's an uneasy alliance of the far right and far left. And if the Conservative group need to decide whether they want to associate with that, because I don't think it's very clever, I don't think it's very smart, and as an administration, we've made our position on that very clear.
You're in coalition with the far right.
Gents, let's keep it on track and on to what we are talking about.
I
Councillor
thought I was speaking, Councillor Rimmer. I thought I had the floor. Councillor Headley, thank you. Electoral gold dust. You oppose the youth zone. Do you talk to anyone ever? Because I promise you, and I engage with a lot of people, everyone you talk to about the youth zone and actually explain what it is, what it means, is in favour. Not just young people, across the age band, because people realise that the youth of Basildon have been badly let down, and have been badly let down by Essex County Council over a long period of time. There were, I think, one or two Conservatives who did attend a very good presentation earlier this year about what a youth zone can do. We had some phenomenally inspirational people come from the Barking and Dagenham youth zone. There was a young person who had been offered a place at Oxford University, who was a Kerr leaver, right? And she said, this is what she said, without the youth zone, that wouldn't have happened. So are you as Conservatives really saying you don't want that for Basildon? That's not good enough for Basildon? What are you offering? What are you people offering? We've heard the usual, opposition to everything, but what are you proposing in place of this? You don't want a youth zone, you don't want an arena, you just want to kick it into the long grass, because that's what you've been doing for forever. That is what you are really good at. But you know what? This administration wants to do stuff, wants to deliver and change people's lives for the better. The high-rise nonsense, right? Okay, let's have this out for once and for all. Were there problems with high-rise developments in the 60s and 70s? Of course there were. Have we said that there wasn't, that they were utopia? No, we haven't. But it's about design, and it's about really good design, and it's about delivering what people want and need. Okay, so the Conservatives delivered some lovely executive homes, but that's not the need in Basildon at this point in time, right? If you want executive homes, there's loads of green space in Billericay, build on there, because that's where the executive, if there is a demand for executive homes, that's where it is. The irony is, those people who will buy those executive homes won't be from Billericay, they'll be from London. So, work it out. Seems a little bit of inconsistency here. We talk about high-rise developments, right? Give you, and you may think this is ridiculous. An example, the Shard, is that a ghetto? Don't think so. So if you've got proper, decent design, delivering the sort of housing and accommodation people need, all well and good. My son's buying a flat in Manchester. There's no parking space. Well, he could actually pay 20 grand for a parking space, but he doesn't, because a lot of young people these days do not want to have a car. If particularly where the public transport is decent, they don't need a car. So again, you're trotting out all these old arguments. You're living in the past again. It's not the 70s. So, get your act together, and please do me one favour. Keep banging on about how much you oppose the youth zone, because I'm very, very grateful to you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGurran. Before I come to group leaders, I'm going to go to Councillor Brown.
Hi, really short, a couple of things. I really do get very frustrated when I sit here and listen to fellow councillors who have been in administration for a very long time and have done nothing to regenerate our town centre that has been effective. have done sit here tonight and say they do not want to give people of Basildon certain privileges, as if the people of Basildon do not deserve to have these services. You all know that I am a teacher and I have worked across our borough. I don't work in the borough right now. Most of you know I work in
Your
town.
sound is
So I spend
breaking up.
time. Oh,
She needs to sort out her IT, as Mr. McGovern's comments.
can you stop interrupting me, Miss Councillor Headley, and you might be able to hear me. I think it's important that we all be respectful and actually sit and listen to what fellow councillors are saying.
I'm trying
Thank
to
you.
say,
As I was trying to say, Councillor Headley, before I was interrupted.
Councillor Brown, just do me a favour, just turn your video off and then your connection will be better.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'll give it another go. As you all know, I am a teacher. I spend a lot of time with teenagers. I have 3 grown-up children now who were teenagers at a time when Essex County Council were taking away youth services, at a time when Essex County Council did not provide good recreational facilities, good mental health facilities, good youth services for those young people across this borough. Tonight, we are talking about a strategy, an ambition for Basildon. And as I keep on saying, we will not apologise for being ambitious. We will not apologise for saying the young people across this borough deserve a youth zone that has the capability of providing those services that Essex County Council have not, that not only provide recreational activities for young people, but also provide academic services, mental health services, career paths, and have huge engagement with local communities and businesses that have enabled young people in other areas to have opportunities that would never have happened otherwise. Are you really saying the people of Basildon, the young people of Basildon, do not deserve that? When we're talking about housing, you talk about the kind of housing that perhaps you would want. You are not the only person in this borough, Councillor Headley. There are young people. My caseload is constantly young people coming to me, asking me for 1, 2-bedroom properties. They are not asking for executive homes on Dry Street. We are trying to provide the kind of homes that will enable our young people to live, work and thrive in this borough. And as a result, we are putting together a strategy that aims to do that. Also, we talk about parking. In a town centre, because of the planning regulations that your Conservative government have put forward, we do not require parking in those areas. However, what we need to recognise is that the kind of accommodation we are offering, those young people are not likely to want cars. As Aidan has said, we have children that are about that age, and we know that the level at which they use vehicles has diminished, but it's only diminished in areas where there is good public transport. We know Essex County Council have not given us the infrastructure that this borough deserves. As part of this ambition, this administration will correct another issue that Essex County Council has caused. If you're talking about facilities, if you're talking about a town centre that can thrive, it is important that we have greater footfall in that town centre. That is why we are looking at housing, and we're looking at the right housing in the right place at the right time. We are not talking about a time machine and building something of the 1960s and 70s. This is an ambitious, futuristic plan that will take us forward for the next 10, 15, 30 years. And I am not surprised, but saddened that fellow Conservative councillors do not want to be part of that ambition and do not feel the people of Basildon deserve decent housing, a youth zone and a town centre that is thriving. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'm going to bring in the committee members and then I'll come to the group leaders. So Councillor Sullivan, if you can speak, I'd suggest you carry on keeping your video off, and then Councillor Rimmer.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right, sorry. First of all, with regard to
So, Councillor Sullivan, it's really cutting out. I was going to say, should other officers turn their videos off, but I don't know that will make any difference to you, Councillor Sullivan, to be honest.
I think if he turns off any other devices that use Wi-Fi, such as his phone, that helps because it's sharing the connection.
Not my phone, it won't.
Okay.
Nokia 3310s, is it?
Thanks, Gaz, Craig.
Pretty
Anyway.
much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, just go with it and see.
All right, okay. All right, well, with regard to the youth zone then, first off, now myself, I've seen and everything and the schematics. Yes, it looks like a great facility. However, what you're doing, you're putting it in a centralised place that everyone would have to come to from the surrounding area. So it's quite away from those people in outlying areas. You're putting everything there in the town centre. So if they're young people particularly, they're going to have to be coming via a car and their parents. Brings us back to the lack of parking in this strategy. So of itself, we're not against it. It's just we think it's putting too many eggs in that one particular basket right there in the middle of the town. And of course, as well, it's net cost £100,000 a year, which is a lot of money. Similarly with the arena. Again, you're going to need a lot of parking for that. That's not provided for. What about a hotel for the arena? We would have scotched by various members of the administration. There's no mention of a hotel in there. That would also assist if you was going to have an arena. And finally, as I also mentioned when I first spoke, we are not against flats per se. We are against the preponderance of flats and the use of flats in high-rise developments. And high-rise developments, even if well designed, are still proven that they will eventually cause crime, social alienation, and various other social problems. And we had to pull down 2 blocks of flats in Langdon as a result of that. So, against it. We're not against these things in and of themselves. We're against them in the way that they are being put forward in this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. What it does also sound like is you're against people coming into the town centre, which is actually a crucial part of what we're trying to do with the youth zone, with the arena, is to actually get people into Basildon so that they spend money in Basildon and commune in Basildon.
You need the parking. You need parking, Chairman.
That's absolutely. And as these developments come forward, that will be a key consideration for the planning committee. But the principle of getting people into Basildon town centre, from all 4 corners of our borough, absolutely, that is what we want to do. That should not be a revolutionary idea, but for some reason in Basildon it is. Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you. No, I echo exactly what Councillor Sullivan said. It may be your ambition to bring people in to the town centre. I understand that, and we're not against that either. We want to increase footfall and look at ways to do that. There is an absolute need to do that and to revive our town centre. There is an absolute need to meet the housing demand from the housing list in terms of the social housing list. But obviously we know that the people on the housing list are not all looking for 2-bedroom flats. And we need to actually increase our housing stock, our social housing stock, to actually meet the demand of the list, and make sure that we have Basildon homes for Basildon people. In terms of the youth zones, I think we're all on the same page as actually wanting to do something for young people and actually give them something to do, something to develop them, something to allow them to launch themselves on to bigger and better things and stay within Basildon. I think we're all on the same page as that. But what we're saying is actually you need to be more agile about it. You need to think smaller on that. You need to think about locales and actually have things closer to people. You have to also start thinking about how do you actually tackle things like the obesity crisis that we have in the UK and what we have in particular in Basildon Borough as well. How do you get people walking more, cycling more? And actually, if you have local youth zones, and you actually create,
which is,
and you actually create,
that, which your fellow
and you actually create routes where they can actually cycle or they can walk in a safe way to those places, then that's actually going to be a better part of that strategy. We've also got to think about how do we actually support more women to go back into work if they've got caring responsibilities as well. And there's some interesting ideas about how you repurpose high streets and actually have more childcare facilities as well. How do you actually get medical facilities and other facilities that people do need closer to where they are as well? We've got these great opportunities to do these things with this town centre regeneration strategy. What we're suggesting is actually to think deeper about this, to actually bring different sets of options there, and actually think about how lifestyles are changing and how we want lifestyles to change. How can we learn from different parts of the world where actually people are living not just longer, but living healthier lives, where they don't have a long period of decline, like 3 or 4 years at the end of their life, but they actually have healthy living up into their late 90s. How do we do that? And that's how bold we're thinking about this. And I fear to say this to you, I get the smack of socialism from the 70s and 80s with this plan, with these monolith projects that actually end up being white elephants, end up costing a lot of money. And they're not actually, you say you're consulting young people, but will they actually go? I mean, it's not necessarily going to be build it and they will come. That we are, the evidence we've heard from youth leaders is that actually, but they will not come.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rimmer. I think that I'm going to bring Councillor Harrison in a moment. I just want to say, you mentioned there about the social housing waiting list. The social housing waiting list, the council house waiting list at the moment is 2,000 strong. 1,700 of those of the 2,000 require a 1 or 2 bedroom. The issue is about the ability for people in 3 and 4 beds in our borough to downsize so that you get that movement in the system. And for 20 years in our borough, we have not built 1 and 2 bedroom properties that have enabled us to be able to do that. At the moment, according to the last statistics we had, only 70 odd 1 and 2 beds are becoming available each year versus a demand of 1,700. So I just say very clearly, when we bring forward Acorn House in 2021, which will be 94 1 and 2 bedroom units, that will be a huge increase in the number that is needed. So I would encourage you, Councillor Rimmer, understand the waiting list far more than apparently you seem to. You ask us to think smaller. I reject that approach completely. We've been thinking small for too long. You talked about the issues of public health challenges. I want us to take control of public health. I want us to take that off Essex County Council. When Councillor Harrison was the mayor and I led the council before, we had the Sport England LDP, which is still running, that we secured for Pitsea, a £10 million investment into improving health outcomes in the poorest part of our borough. You talk about bringing health services. Blood testing is now happening in the Eastgate Centre as a consequence of this master plan and the commitment that we are putting in to bringing non-acute services off the hospital campus and into our town centre. You talk about making it easier for women to get into work and get back into jobs while balancing childcare. I would argue that having jobs on industrial estates like we have with the CCG and other office jobs versus having jobs in a town centre close to a youth zone, that I think is a much more joined up approach to it. So again, I think you were probably more in favour of this than you actually thought originally. And then you talk about how you guys are thinking deeper about this. It has been 17 years that you had to think about it. At some point, I would quite like to hear what it is that you guys have thought about, but we'll park that for now because we have a long list of speakers. And I'm going to go to Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman. Sitting here listening to this, I'm appalled. We had a town centre revival committee, the very first one, and that was very well presented, and it was unanimous at the end we needed to move forward. Basildon has stood still for about 35 years. I've sat back and watched it. It's dying on its feet. We now have developers, and this is a Labour leader who's bringing developers into this town who are going to put forward planning applications. They will do that whether we have a master plan, a strategy, or whatever. That will happen. They want to build on the Orwells want to build, Marston's want to build. There's empty properties there with Marks and Spencer's has gone. They want to build. There will be planning applications. It's important that this council has some control over the design, etc. So tonight we were talking about a strategy, produce guidance notes, etc. So that when the planning applications come before the planning committee, there's some semblance of what is required by this council in terms of satisfying all the things that were mentioned at the various webinars we had with the relevant people who's going to put these planning applications in, so that people had their say. Now, on the youth zone, I find it interesting. We had Onside come to my committee and a presentation of about an hour and a half. Everyone was very supportive of Onside on that committee. They supported it. And it was explained to them, and I'd explained to Councillor Rimmer, they were bringing people in from across wide areas, not just in Barking and Dagenham, in Carlisle, in the north, and various other places. They've got 14. Last week, I was asked, and I attended a meeting, on virtual meeting, with a representative of Chelmsford City Council to ask, how do you do it? Because they now want to do the same for Chelmsford, and I put them in touch with Onside. The County Council, it's only a whisper, but they're pushing to try and get one in Colchester, but with Onside. So it's spreading. Now, Councillor Sullivan talks about bringing people in. How do you bring people in from the outer areas? Exactly the same way, Councillor Sullivan, as they come in to the college, which you've put in the town centre. They come in from across the borough. They will do the same for the youth zone. The consultation. Last night at my meeting, Conservative members, we talked about consultation with young people. I think the consultation, the way we do it, is very important. We need to get down to the connectivity across the borough so all youngsters can be reached. And for that reason, the consultation process, what comes forward, has to be agreed by the chairman of the committee. The Conservative members were pressing to make sure we get to the hard to reach youngsters across the borough. Great. I said we will achieve that. We come to the vote, and it appears that unless the Tory members on my committee had permission perhaps to go to the toilet or not, they had to vote against it because that was a group decision, although one did abstain, so good luck, good to him. But it's an essential thing for young people in this borough. Going back to the strategy, I would like to ask someone a question. First one tonight, perhaps. When the Orwell presentation was given to members, I asked a question, because last night my committee also dealt with a major thing affecting this borough, the waste strategy. I want to make sure that when these applications come forward to this council, how we deal with waste for these buildings is well known in advance. Because 15% of our borough, we cannot operate as we do in the other 85 in collecting waste. So how it's collected in the town centre, if any of this development takes place, from the first development now to year 2035, which is in the government's environmental bill for reaching the waste requirements for this country. So Tim, Matt, anybody, have we covered the waste part to the satisfaction of what Basildon Council will be requiring in the waste strategy? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. From a planning perspective, Christine, in terms of the applications that have come forward, you've been dealing with the issue of waste, and I don't know if you want to answer that specifically from Councillor Harrison.
So at the moment, the waste strategy would be using our normal waste strategy that the council's got in place at the moment. The developments will be retrofitted with ducting to enable us to look at NVAC or something similar in the future. So, I mean, it won't be. I mean, NVAC is a type, not. It would be a vacuum extraction system, or whatever we get to at the time when the council's made that assessment. So, but the developers are all retrofitting the ducting in for that, and also whether we look at energy centre in the future, they'll retrofit ducting in for that. So the systems will be able to put in after the developments are completed, which is something similar they've done at Wembley, the Brent development at Wembley for the stuff around Wembley Stadium. They part of that is connected to NVAC already, and the system there sets in passive ducting to allow the rest of the development to be connected in as development gets nearer completion and the NVAC system is extended. Has that answered your question?
Thank you, Christine. Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been interesting to hear what's been said, and I thank my colleagues for moving what was a very sensible amendment. I mean, Councillor Harrison, the Wickford Independent that backs Labour at every single level. I'm not surprised. Of course, he supports everything that Councillor Callaghan has said. Councillor Smith, the Independent of Nethermain, that he supports the Labour administration. Am I surprised that he backs everything that Councillor Callaghan has proposed? No, of course I'm not, because that's what you'd expect. You've thrown your hand into the
Councillor Baggett, did you want to pay a coin for the hotel?
You take the bags of silver, so of course you're going to actually support a plan, no matter how flawed it is. When you actually dig into it, nothing really adds up, does it? The figures of housing about the OAN, they're either part of the OAN or they're not part of the OAN. It's only 2,000 and already underway. It's more than 2,000 and not started yet. The youth zone is for everyone in the borough, but no transport provided. There's no thought whatsoever that's gone into.
No.
Sorry, Councillor Callaghan?
Councillor Baggett's going to be removed from the meeting.
That is disgraceful.
And for what reason am I being removed from the meeting?
Because you're launching personal attacks on individual councillors. This is not.
No, I've said that they're part. Is Councillor Harrison part of the alliance or not? Was that a statement of fact or not?
We just removed Councillor Baggett from the meeting.
Making references to people taking silver. That's the accusation.
Yes.
You don't get paid then, Councillor Smith. All your allowances go to charity, do they?
Councillor Baggett.
Okay, gents,
if you want to take further with the Stansbourne complaint, you know where the form is.
I'm quite happy for you to throw me out of your meeting because I'm saying things that are unpalatable to you, that you don't want the public to hear or you to hear. If you feel that I've said something wrong, you have a standards board, which you're very familiar with.
To a vote. I will ask all members for a vote on removing Councillor Baggett from the meeting.
In favour.
No, I would oppose that, Chairman, but personally.
You can oppose that all you like, but that's the vote that's on the table and you do not vote on this. So I will vote in favour. Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Brown.
Favour.
Councillor McGarren.
Wholeheartedly in favour.
Councillor Headley.
Against.
Councillor Rimmer.
Against, and I think every member deserves a warning before this type of vote takes place.
Thank you.
Depends on the behaviour.
Now carried.
That's great.
Chairman, if I can just advise that the procedure is to actually be that the member be not heard further initially, then given a formal warning and then removed. So to follow procedure, this has gone through that the member be not heard further.
So what's the motion?
It's to the member not be heard further. So you've obviously voted on that. You can't just remove initially.
We're not in that position because unfortunately you can't do that on a Zoom meeting. So as we've previously discussed with the monitoring officer, I will now move to remove, as we've just taken that vote. So let's do that, please.
Democracy in action under Councillor Callaghan.
Well, Councillor Baggett,
Democracy in action under Councillor Callaghan. You you may have got the whip on all your members to make them vote for a flawed master plan, but that doesn't actually work when it's opposition, is it? And you've got a very good record when people say things you don't want to hear, that you actually do everything you can to bully them or get rid of them.
Unmute themselves as we move to the recommendations in the report. I vote in favour of the recommendations.
You wouldn't
Councillor Smith. Councillor McGarren, Councillor McGarren, we are voting on the recommendations.
Councillor Callaghan, I'd like to speak on the recommendations.
Listen, I'm taking advice here from Democratic Services that what we have agreed is not being enforced. So as a consequence of that, I'm not having this shambles of a member coming into this meeting who, by the way, substituted out of this meeting, and therefore it is only by the good grace of the chair that was invited to speak, launching personal attacks on councillors and using this forum to besmirch other members and to denigrate what is, and we've heard it on several times tonight, a very serious report for this council. So we have taken a vote that Councillor Baggott will not be heard. That is what I'm being advised that the vote now is. Now that is an unfortunate position. I've never done that in 4 years of chairing meetings. That's a very unfortunate position, but I'm not having a shambles where the public are watching this and senior politicians are not able to keep their comments civil and they're not able to keep order. It's not acceptable. So I will ask Councillor Smith as the vice chair of this committee to speak, and then I will move to the vote. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to pick up on a few things. Can I start with a question, please, through the chair? Tom Ash, as a council employee and working on this project, if there was no master plan and it was left to the free market to do it as it likes, what is the maximum number of units can you get into the footprint of Basildon Town Centre for housing?
I'm afraid I haven't got those figures immediately at hand, Councillor Smith, but I would imagine that the market would be pushing for relevant numbers to suit the demand in the marketplace. The issue being is that the whole purpose behind the regen strategy and the guidance principles in the charter is to try and encourage and align that development with our ambitions and vision. If we don't, then there could be more of a free-for-all in the marketplace.
Thank you for confirming that question for the public's benefit. There's a few things I want to pick up upon. We've heard in tonight's debate from opposition members who know how to make their case without making it personal, is the issue of transportation. When the issue first arose about the crazy idea to make Cherry Down Eastern Station Way two-way traffic, the then officer at the time at Essex County Council, now she's retired, I hope she's enjoying her retirement, said, and I asked her about where are people going to park up at Basildon Station to pick up loved ones? It doesn't work out, your two-way scheme. So she said to me, and her name was Beverly, as she's got to come to my mind, we will educate the people of Basildon on how to use bikes. That's the view of the Highway Authority, that somehow we need to be educated to use bikes. So it's important we pass this master plan so that we can approach the Highway Authority, say you need to help us improve the transportation, and most importantly, the public transport. That's very important. When we talk about public transport as well, a developer, as the law stands today, not if tomorrow, not if next week, or something you may have read in a Sunday newspaper, the law as we speak today says when you're in the footprint of a town centre, you can more or less get away with building a development in a town centre with no parking spaces. And if a planning committee votes against a planning application upon that basis, the planning authority, namely Basildon Council, would lose it on appeal. We'd lose it hands down. So that is important. We have this master plan. Yes, there is not sufficient parking, but it's the best of our bad legal situation. And we can't play roughshod over planning law, because when we do, we lose on appeal and the borough council's taxpayers pay the legal costs of appeal. The other benefit of this master plan is to be actually able to go to Essex County Council, the Education Authority, and demonstrate our infrastructure needs. Now, we spoke earlier, as I mentioned, about Trafford House while I was waiting for this meeting to start, with its proposal to add nearly 200 flats on Palmer's site. And the nearby primary schools are near enough oversubscribed. Everyone's fighting to get into Woodland School and they cannot get their child in there because it's a really good, popular Basildon Town Centre school. So I won't read out word for word this email that Councillor Ray Gooding, the Cabinet Member for Education at Essex County Council, sent to me on the 8th of July of this year when I asked him to support my actions to increase primary capacity at schools, either Kingswood or possibly Gilgrove. And his response back to me was that if they can't get their first preference, namely Kingswood or another nearby town centre school, there's Marylands. And if you put that on the AA maps, if you walk from Trafford House to the school, come back and do the same as an afternoon as a parent, that's 11.1 miles. So it's important to have that master plan so we can get this infrastructure available, because we want to make people call our town their home. That's the place they want to live. I shan't criticise the state of the town. It speaks for itself. It really does. And again, if we don't have a master plan, we will end up the biggest pigeon coop in Europe, namely the cinema, if we haven't got a nighttime economy. Lovely thing, that cinema, you know, biggest screen outside of London. But if you don't have a nighttime economy, you might as well open the doors of a nighttime for the pigeons. At least they'll find better use for it. So it's important there to make it viable. And also, that's the other thing. Where do you go if you live in Basildon of an evening? It's lovely down Billericay High Street, Wickford Town Centre. There's a nighttime economy. You can go for a drink, go for a walk. It's very limited, the choice. For the population size of Basildon, we can do so much better. And also, I'm leading on the Purple Pound project. We have so many disabled residents who would love to use our town centre. When we launched the Purple Pound project, I was getting lots of contacts from disabled people or those who care for people to ask for those toilets that these people, I forget their name. I think they're called Changing Places toilets off the top of my head. And they're very detailed ones for people with specific disabilities. I want to make sure whatever your disability is in Basildon or possibly outside of the town centre, and you want to come to our town centre for an afternoon or just a coffee with friends, it should not be a military operation. And my team, Dengue, working with our outside contractor on this one, who's doing a lot of work, is to speak to the existing businesses, and we've asked them to speak to the new developers to make the new town centre the most disabled friendly town in the country. That's what we're calling the Purple Pound project. And with regards to housing, it's awful. It's just, we don't have the housing stock we need. And I'm not talking about the 2,000 people on the council waiting list. I'm talking about the people who cannot get on the council housing waiting list because they might earn a little bit too much money, their children may have left home, and they're subject to the mercy of private landlords every year, waiting for that letter. Do they renew their tenancy or not? Is the rent going up again? And all that fear and worry. And what we can be using is trying to use these new developments in the town to try and help Basildon people. And we've missed, and what I'm focusing on is, I say, those people who cannot get on our housing waiting list, but they're on a low income. And it's important they've given a voice and they are represented. But in conclusion, as you said before, Leader, doing nothing is not an option. If the 4 recommendations fail tonight, I guarantee you developers will kiss the hands of the people who vote against it, because it will be Christmas again for developers and the residents will curse those who vote against the recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. We're going to move to the recommendations 1 to 4 as set out. If I can ask members to unmute themselves as we kick off the vote. I will vote in favour. Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor McGurran.
In favour.
Councillor Headley. Councillor Sullivan.
Against.
Councillor Rimmer.
Against.
Thank you, members. The vote is carried by 4 votes to 3. Thank you to our officers. We will meet again on the 21st of October for our next P&R. And I hope that at that meeting, we will take the temperature down slightly from this evening. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers. We'll see you on the 21st.